Once again, I don't know. It could be 1 o'clock. It could be 12:56. But I see we've got a lot of people in the room, so I'm happy. 55 people here. So I was puttering around the studio, moving some stuff around. And I did okay. Put stuff back where it belonged. But 90 knots. I am not flooded. Got a ton of rain, but did not get flooded. Downtown Detroit got flooded. Some of the freeways that are below grade have water over the roofs of cars that got stuck there. I saw some people living in the Grosse Points who got flooded. A lot of water out of the area failed, and that's part of the problem. So there you go. D. Murex, hello from Gainesville, Florida. Thank you for checking in. Daniel Kester, hey, Dan, how are you doing? Glad to see you here and checking it out here. I got the water. Is Michigan in a drought? Matador. Well, we were up until about 2 days ago. That drought is over. I've got standing water on my property in some places. And it was so dry for so long that every time it rained, it just got soaked in like a sponge. And the planet got super saturated in my general area recently. So Orgborg says the Pacific Northwest could use some water. Well, if I learned nothing from watching Frasier, it's that you guys have more than enough rain. So I guess the cliches aren't always true. Duncan Campbell checking in from Melbourne, Australia. Thank you, my friend. Always good to see you. Danny Bates checking in from Raleigh, North Carolina. Beautiful part of the country. Daniel Kester is doing okay. JP's hello from I-20, checking in from on the road. JP travels quite a bit and often sends me shirts from his travels. In fact, I wore one in a video I shot this morning, which will pop up on the YouTube tomorrow. So thank you. Hobie Jackson from Texas, Doug Onby from Chattanooga, and someone else just checking in. Andrew Zubke from Adrian, Michigan. Adrian, Michigan, a cool little town south of Detroit. Not like the song Journey, but neat little town down there. I know people who worked at the radio station that was there for many, many years. And that was one of those places where a lot of people who wound up in the Detroit market, if you asked them what stations they'd worked at, the radio station in Adrian was one of the ones that popped up on the list. Scott Argyle from Salt Lake City, RJ Hikes from Kentucky, and L. Tahone 47901. Lafayette, Indiana, downtown in the law office. The law office. Well, thank you for checking in, my friend. Working on a Sunday. Either you're trying to impress somebody or you've got a trial coming up. Sunday, come on. Roxanne, hello, everyone. Daniel Kester says, hey, send some of the rain my way. Shreveport, Louisiana has gasoline at $2.55 a gallon, according to Ed McDonald. I think it's still hovering around 3-ish here. I haven't bought gas in a couple days. I'm trying to remember what I paid for it last. So Stephen Baines, hey, what's rain? Checking in from Phoenix, Arizona. Keith E, hey, I'm here, waving my hand. Well, that's one way of doing it. Ian Douglas, hello from Highland Grove, Ontario, near Algonquin, raining hard. Just someone's hello from Israel. Thank you for checking in. I love when people check from other countries. I'm always fascinated how the internet works. Johnny Bravo is keeping an eye on me from North Central Ohio. Biff Bifford, the drought here in California is so bad they'll shut down the Owens Valley Reservoir Dam from producing energy by August because there's no water. That's tough. When I was in California in 89 through 91, there was a bit of a drought. Just meaning I didn't see rain for months and months and months at a time. But even that's nothing compared to what's going on out there now. SOMD Steve was checking in from Southern Maryland. I'm guessing the name of his icon there is Southern Maryland Steve. So thank you for checking in. Mad Anthony's checking in from Clearwater, Florida. And Gary Weisenberger, West Bloomfield, Michigan, 83 and sunny, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I got right now where I am 81 and sunny, but it's so muggy out you can taste it. I mean, you can chew on it. And which reminds me, someone sent me a book on Stilton cheese. Talked about Stilton cheese a couple of videos back because there was the guy who took a photograph of some Stilton cheese, and then the police used that photograph to round him up. And I jokingly said, what's the deal with Stilton cheese? It must be something special to a cheese connoisseur. And so I cracked that joke. A lot of people explained in the comments what Stilton cheese was. And then I got this book in the mail from England this past week. Dear Mr. Lehto, I stumbled upon your broadcast by accident. and despite their content rarely having any relevance to a UK viewer, I find them both intriguing and entertaining. That's my goal. A lack of relevance that intrigues and entertains. That might be my new motto. I gotta talk to my graphic designer about that. He says, I noted in a recent video you mentioned your ignorance on the subject of Stilton cheese. I'm sure that by now this has been adequately addressed in the comments. However, I saw this book in a charity shop the following day. I've had to expand your knowledge to a point of saturation and possibly raise a smile, which it did. Trust me. Please accept it as a token of appreciation for your channel. Respectfully yours, Neil. And it's beautiful. It's actually an illustrated history of Stilton cheese. Everything you want to know about where it came from, how it became what it is, and everything. More than you possibly want to know about any kind of cheese, let alone one particular cheese. And this is, of course, a story of Stilton cheese. And it makes me want to go to Stilton and have some cheese. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Real Mr. Anonymous is in Pontiac, Michigan, which, of course, is the north end of the Woodward Dream Cruise. I'll be out there at the Dream Cruise in Pontiac. Thank you for checking in. Cotaxista, cool and rainy in Denver, hot and dry in the Pacific Northwest. Who swapped our climates? Keegan Weisenberger's from Oakley, Michigan, and people are exchanging where they are. That's fine. I like to see that. Dave Beddoes, of course, from White Rock, BC. Once in a while, I like to mention that White Rock is the name of a small town that's basically non-existent here in Michigan. By the way, when the show is over, I'm going to go out in the hot sun, assuming it's not raining, and do some yard work. So I'm enjoying the nice, cool studio for the time being, although these lights might make me hot. Lee Maynard, hello from England. Thank you for checking in, Lee. I appreciate that. I know it's probably Maynard, but I occasionally overpronounce names, over-enunciate names. Johnny Bravo, watch all your videos. I don't see you running out of subject material anytime soon. I'll make stuff up if I have to. Mark Hiles looking for a book on Gouda. Was it Gouda? I don't know. Like I said, with me, cheese, it's Swiss. And I know Swiss is actually kind of bland, so. Timo Rutinen says there are surprisingly few fellow Finns. Some will show up, Timo. Trust me on that one, my friend. There's a lot of Finns who watch my channel primarily because my last name, they recognize that my last name is Finnish. And I know some Finns in America who came here from Finland. I know some Finns in America who descended from Finns like myself. Just depends how many generations back you go. And then I do also correspond with some Finns in Finland. So I appreciate when you guys check in. I like that. Chris Page checking in with a beautiful day here in Virginia. Very cool. Jordan Alsup, Steve, what are your thoughts on the Chauvin sentencing? I find it very fair for having 4 convictions. And Canadian Robot Lady says it's good. Chauvin got sentenced. I did watch the sentencing, and I hate to get involved because unfortunately, even though it's a case involving the law, it does get very political. He could have gotten a lot more, and he could have gotten a lot less. And I know that sounds like a cop-out, but that's in the range of sentencing that seems to me to be appropriate for those convictions. So obviously, if those convictions were to get overturned on appeal, it's a different matter. But I'm just at this point in time saying, let's assume that the convictions are good convictions with those charges and all that. That's an appropriate sentence, I believe. I know some people are very upset on both ends of that. And that's how life often is. If you've got a negotiation, and I know it's not a negotiation, but I'm trying to give an example here. If you've got a negotiation where two sides are trying to, I want more money, you want to pay less money, and we're both unhappy at the end of the deal, it's probably a decent resolution, So that's one way of looking at it. But there's no right or wrong answer here. That's my opinion. And somebody asked for an opinion, so there you go. Ray Lapp says, hi from Toronto. Used to live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Did you go to U of M or just hanging out there? Mr. Phil, 1969 afternoon from New Jersey. Everyone. But how are you, Steve? I'm doing good. By the way, I hit it very, very well, but you can still see the remains of it right there. I had a bruise on my wrist that 2 days ago looked so bad. I was considering putting something over it. And then I just told myself, well, just as long as you keep your hand down like this or off camera, you're fine. But I mean, I had people go, whoa. And all I just hit it on the corner of a desk, a table, a work table. And it was such a fine little point corner that it hit and it caused the bruise to get really, really bad. So, but I'm fine now. Mampa Pete says, so what's the update on the private lockbox owners will be getting their stuff returned without further litigation? No. Litigation never ends. Litigation just begins. Unfortunately, what's going to happen right now is going to be more litigation on this. And as you recall, it started with a criminal warrant that allowed the FBI to go in and take possession of stuff. They then said, once you got stuff in our possession, we're going to keep it. Then some people filed a lawsuit and said, you can't do that. And a judge entered a temporary restraining order stopping them from keeping it, which means there's going to be a further hearing down the road, at which point, presumably, they'll make a decision. Yes, they can keep it. No, they can't keep it. So they want to keep the stuff. Presumably, they can begin forfeiture proceedings and start laying out the case for each of the 369 people that they claim are criminals. And so there could be 369 more cases, so this is just the beginning, unfortunately. So there you go. James Chmelik, are lawyers allowed to make things up on the fly? That could be a very, very obscure question, or that might just be direct. You can make things up on the fly if you're not in court and you're not speaking about a legal case. You're not trying to mislead anybody. So when I'm sitting here right now, I can just talk. I can just talk all day long. But if I'm in court and a judge asks me a question and I know the answer, I've got to answer the question, assuming it's appropriate to do so. But I cannot lie to the court. I cannot mislead the court. And I also cannot, in many circumstances, lie to other people outside of court. So the question is what I'm saying supposed to be factually based and important for some reason? Or is it just me talking? I'm just talking right now. But if I'm in court and a judge says, Mr. Lehto, your client purchased the car. Is the car titled in your client's name? I would know the answer to that. I would say yes, or I would say no. If I said yes, it is, and the judge then pulled the title and said, how come the title doesn't have your client's name on it? I better have a good answer for that, because that could be a problem. So in court in particular, things I say and things I file need to be accurate. And that's one of the things that all lawyers know when they become a lawyer, especially been a lawyer for a while. MD Hofsty, Steve Lehto, hi from the home of three astronauts and Gerald Ford. Grand Rapids, I'm guessing. Gary Weisenberger, to the best of my memory. To the best of my knowledge, unfortunately, is a common thing that people say, and it becomes like a knee-jerk reaction. And it's almost like when people say, well, you mean allegedly. And I've given a review before where I've been talking about a case to a journalist, and I said, this guy did such and such, and the journalist corrected me and said, allegedly. And I said, no, he did it. I wish I still had it. I don't think I have that anymore. But that was in a video an interview I once did. I just can't remember what outlet it was for. But I corrected them. Said, no, not allegedly. He actually did that. So Doug Jones reminds us you can tune a guitar, but you can't tune a fish, especially if you're at a Subway. Fish guy, what was the biggest aha moment you've ever had or seen in court? I'm not sure. I haven't really had a whole bunch of surprises, those kind of surprises that are, surprise witnesses and somebody breaking down in the stand and confessing, like in Perry Mason. When Perry Mason was wrapping up a half hour, you knew things were about to get real interesting. There's 1 minute left till the credits roll. Someone's about to confess. Donald Whittemore, do you advertise billboards, yellow pages, etc.? No, and no. I've never paid anything for advertising, which was a conscious decision I made very early in my career to simply try to get the word out other ways, which is one of the reasons I wound up on the radio and on the internet. So, Sub GR77 is 1/4 finish enough. Yes, it is. If you, excuse me, I guess in my eye. If you can tell me that, okay, you got 2 parents and you got 4 grandparents, generally speaking. And I know things are different these days, but if one of your 4 grandparents was born in Finland and came to America, you're 1 quarter finished, you're all right in my book. Okay. So I can just tell you right now that all of my great grandparents, all of them, started in Finland and came to America right around roughly the same time. There was a couple big migration movements from Finland to the US. So Derek Smith, Doug Jones, both asking about Crazy Town. There is no end date or update on that. Someday I'll tell the whole story, but I can't tell it just yet. Hate to leave things hanging like that, but everyone asks every weekend and I feel bad. Fred Blower is checking in from Grandville, Michigan. I've mentioned before, my dad had a car called a Pontiac Grandville, one of the largest cars you ever did see. Jason Johnson, did you see the Tour de France debacle? Yes, I did. I was not watching it live, but it popped up. I forgot where, on Twitter or someplace. Oh my gosh, did you see what happened at the Tour? The first stage of the Tour de France, they're going down a fairly narrow road in the peloton, all packed together, and some idiot steps out holding a sign, and she wants to be on television, and so she jumps in front of or leans over in front of 2 or 3 riders, but she's facing the camera, which is in front of the riders, and the riders are behind her. And she winds up tangling up one of the riders in her arms and in her sign, and the rider goes down, and it causes a chain reaction, injured a whole bunch of people, damaged a whole bunch of bikes, caused just mayhem. And she very quickly just skedaddled. And right now, French authorities are looking for her. And they've said specifically if they catch her, she's going to be prosecuted and she's going to be sued. And apparently they've got laws over there for that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't want to be her right about now. Vagabond 88817. Have you ever taken goods from a client instead of cash payment? No, I've never had a client offer me goods instead of a cash payment. That happened in To Kill a Mockingbird. I seem to recall some gentleman came by and paid Atticus in some kind of farm goods, like walnuts or something. I forgot what the goods were. Probably more common back in the old days, but I've I've never had a client come by. And actually, I should qualify that. I had a client who worked for a business that installed electronics. And when I was talking to him, I said, I want to buy something. And when our case is over, I want to talk to you about having one of those installed in my vehicle. And he did install it. And I think he tried to give it to me. And I think I still paid him. But there was that moment where I'm like, no, I'm going to pay you. And he's like, no, I won't take your money. I remember that discussion. I don't remember how it ended. But that was not payment for the case. He had already paid me for the case. So. Chris Totsky, love your channel. Thank you. Timo Rutten in Finland never forgives any Swedes. I missed the first half of this. Nico Pasla is answering Joel Kirschenman, who says, oh, can you forgive me for being 3/8 Swedish? Of course not. I'm just kidding. It's a friendly rivalry between the Swedes and the Finns. And speaking as an American who's descended from Finns, I'll admit that the Finns might feel differently about that, who actually live in Finland. Fish guy, would 3 chickens and a pig keep you on retainer? Especially if you put the pig in a poke. Yes. Chris Page, how about a bag of pecans? Ed Lowe, my mom's client was a butcher who paid her in filet mignon. I prefer hot dogs to this day. I like hot dogs, but I can tell you right now that filet mignon is also something that I feel quite strongly about. So. Junior G, I found your channel like a month ago and I'm hooked. You make my time at dialysis go by fast from Southern California. I'm sorry to hear that. I've known people who had dialysis and it's just a lot of time spent sitting there. So sorry about that. Tiger Stripes. I find those insurance commercials bizarre where the client is ripping off their employer to do a favor for the insurance agent. I find most insurance commercials in America just bizarre to begin with because they never advertise, for the most part, what they do other than they're less expensive than the other guy. And you can buy insurance for us in 15 minutes and save money or you can pay monthly. But it's like, yeah, but will you cover me in an accident? So Guy Lee says he's getting his notifications late, third week in a row, 15 minutes or so late. Check-in from Lindenwald. Yeah, I don't know how that works. I don't know. I mean, I get a notice. I mean, when I finish these streams and I'm shutting everything down, I look at my phone and it goes, "You are now live on YouTube." Thank you for telling me. Oh, Starbucks coffee with a year's supply of coffee. Buy me out of a speeding ticket. I'm not a coffee drinker, so that wouldn't be much coffee. Oh, boy. Draven Oberlink, did you hear about Omaha police being able to immediately tow a vehicle on jack stands on private property? You mean a vehicle that's deemed to be quote unquote up on blocks, like as an eyesore or something? I know some cities have got ordinances on that, but generally speaking, the ordinance requires them to give you a notification of your violation and so on. So, Donnie D, did you check out the story about the town that accidentally sold its water tower? Yes, I did. I did do a video on that because there's not much to it. But some town in Florida sold a piece of property, which I think they thought was surplus, like they didn't need it anymore. And so they basically just said, oh, yeah, we're going to sell this piece of property. They took bids and they sold it to somebody. And somebody pointed out that the piece of property was here and there's a water tower over it. And apparently the water tower is part of the property, not. And so the guy wound up owning the water tower as well. I'm not sure how it worked out, but I just know that that was one of those things that surprised some people. And it was, surprise, small town sells water tower. Nick Talby, is there a difference legally between a commonwealth and a state? Commonwealth of Kentucky here. I know Pennsylvania is also a commonwealth. I believe they're simply synonyms in one respect, because everyone always says, America's got 50 states, Michigan's a state, Pennsylvania's a commonwealth, but there are 50 states, right? And so if you're looking at the stars on the flag, there's a star there for Pennsylvania, one for Kentucky. The question then becomes, though, is there a difference inside that state? And I don't know. I'm assuming it has something to do with how it was formed, like the Constitution. And I don't know. I've never read the constitutions of Pennsylvania or Kentucky to see if there is a difference. But I just know as far as like states' rights go, state laws go, all of that stuff, they're treated like states. I just know that I've had people tell me, oh, by the way, Steve, we're not a state, we're a commonwealth. I think you both are a state and a commonwealth. So, Boycat says that the man gave the water tower back, but did he keep the property? William T, have you been canoeing lately? No, I've not. I haven't had the canoe out this year. I've just been too busy. Matt, or what are townships? There's a whole thing I could do about the actual, what different entities are, because there's townships and there's cities and there's villages. And that's why I'll often say a municipality in reference to an area that is established or organized within a state. Municipality can be a city, a village, a township, and so on. So, James Schmelik, I give you a case of Guinness for getting me out of a speeding ticket. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Oh, Kirk Freeman, the township could be a subdivision of a county. Yeah, but you'll often hear the township will actually be the entity that controls the area. So it'll be like a township board and so on. Yeah, someone's suggesting it's not Me 07 that the Commonwealth might just sound better. It does. Tom says, Steve, take a break from YouTube and go canoeing. Well, if I did that, I would videotape it and I would wind up right back on YouTube. So it wouldn't get me much of a break from YouTube in that sense. Yeah, G Vogt says, don't forget the parishes in Louisiana. Yeah, and there's a lot of that weird stuff. Even in Detroit, for instance, in Michigan, we've got district courts, and then we've got the circuit courts. And the Grosse Points actually have their own court system where they've got magistrates, but they don't have a district court in that sense. And so what winds up happening is if you're in one of those places and you need to file a lawsuit that's below circuit court level, you file it with a magistrate's court, a municipal court. And it's the only place in Michigan that they exist that I know of. So, JB, big fan of your show here in Canada. The Fuse Man says his mom was born in the hamlet of Ebenezer. The hamlet of Ebenezer. Ryan Previtt, has there been any further updates on the Lugnuts case that went to appeal? Well, the Lugnuts, are you talking about the class action Lugnuts case or the Lugnuts case about the mechanics in Michigan? Because I believe that the swollen Lugnut class actions are just out there. But in Michigan, the case regarding the guys who didn't tighten the Lugnuts down, the Michigan Supreme Court ruled that that was a completed job. They don't need to worry about it. And you can't sue them for that. So John Zablek says, where I live, my village lies in 2 townships. Yeah, and I've also seen a lot of situations where there's 2 towns that are next to each other, but the school district goes over a little bit for some weird reason. So people who live on this edge of this town might go to that school district, but that's becoming less important now with schools of choice and so on. Idris Taylor says Alaska has boroughs. Boroughs, really? Because you always hear about boroughs when it comes to voting. So. Danny Bates, what's the car you couldn't be paid to drive in? Well, I've never owned a foreign car. I'll just throw that out there. I did at one point in time rent a Volkswagen, a little Volkswagen Beetle. It was the only car they had, and I felt silly driving it. I don't know why, but what are you gonna do? Ed McDonald, the capital of Louisiana, Baton Rouge, means red stick in French. Yeah, like Moulin Rouge. It's like Red House, isn't it? There's the Rouge River, which flows through Detroit out into the Detroit River, which, of course, that river ain't red. It's brown, but red's a nicer sounding color than brown when it comes to river. FDSS, no Yoda ever. Yeah, I never driven a Toyota, I don't think. Albert V or Albert the Fifth. I'm like Steve. I don't do foreign cars or imports, however you prefer. Bond James, the Canadian River flows through Texas. I love wacky place names like that, where you get something like that. Where's the Canadian River? Canada? No, Texas. David Phillips, red baton. Yes. But I think baton can have different connotations. JP says Moulin is a mill. Is it really? Okay, it makes sense. I mean, you would know. You speak French. Quaka Forces, I thought Moulin was a windmill. It's not Mio 7. Are you saying my Lexus RX 350 is a foreign car from Canada? Well, we've talked about this before, the whole debate about, there's cars that are built by Honda in America, cars built by Ford in Canada. And what do they become then? So I've always gone off the nomenclature, good word, of where the company is based. Ford, GM, and Chrysler are American car companies, although Chrysler is slipping away from us. And Toyota and BMW are foreign. Okay, so there you go. G Vogue says, check out the qualifications for a car to qualify as being made in America. Well, and I know that the build sheets routinely say what the percentage of the car is. They'll say so much percentage of the car was built here, so much percentage was built here, or where it's assembled, and they give you the percentages now. It's crazy. Jordan also says moulin is French for windmill. Lee Maynard says in the country of Wales is a place name called Ilanfair, Willigangilly, Gogurchun. Yeah, no. I hope you cut and paste that, because that's a catastrophe. That's a typographical catastrophe. And it's probably, I'm guessing, a sentence, like the place where the man lost his sheep but found 2 goats while watching donkey gymnastics. You know? Tiger Stripe says, Scotty Kilmer says, you want a car built in Japan or Canada? Okay. Richard Shoemaker reminds me of the quick trip through Hell, Michigan. Never heard of the origin. Could you elaborate what you know about the origin? I don't know anything about the origin of the name Hell. I assume they named it after the place, the other place, but I don't know. I should look that up. I know it's famous. Everyone in Michigan knows that we've got a town called Hell and a town called Paradise that's way up north. So David Mashaya points out that Ford is but an assembler of parts. He's quoting an attorney I dealt with years ago who said that Ford didn't manufacture any vehicles. All they did was assemble the parts, even though the Lemon Law specifically defines a manufacturer as one who assembles the parts of an automobile. Cotaxista had bad luck with a Canadian-built Ford. Hey, they're designed a certain way. There's only so much you can do. Yeah, Rick0000 reminds us that Pennsylvania is a town called Intercourse. Intercourse. I know there's a bunch of other funny names out there also. Also, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I think they did that to win a contest. I'm not sure if it was worth the prize or not. MD Hofsty says, hey, in some roundabout ways, Hell is halfway between U of M and MSU. I've never checked that on a map, but I will. Southern Maryland Steve says, take your Viper to Hell and back. I could. In fact, it's supposed to be a really nice driving road out there. Roadandtrack.com or carandriver.com. One of the two actually did an article about a road out there where they take all their cars to test drive them. That's beautiful blacktop that winds and weaves through the countryside. I'll have to check that out. Nathan Miller checking from Berrien Springs, Michigan, down in the southwest corner of the state. Pruna Blue Pepper. What's better, a motor in the front or back? You know, that's a tough call. People tell you that mid-engine cars are balanced better for road courses. Good old American muscle cars got the engine up front and the driving wheels out back. And, you know, we all know that you're going to get better traction front engine, front wheel drive, or rear engine, rear wheel drive. And then you have steering issues. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of variety out there. Go with what makes you happiest. I was impressed that Corvette came out with the mid-engine Corvette. I've heard nice things about it, but I've yet to have a ride in one. So one of these days, maybe I will, and we can talk about it. Joel Kirschman, this beautiful black top actually exists in Michigan. Yes, it's such a rare thing that when they wrote the article, people were actually complaining, going, please don't tell people about it. Oh, boy. Grana Saber says Bessemer is the best town ever. Bessemer. Bessemer is up in the far left end of the UP, as I recall. Welsh Dragon 99 says, Steve, you're right about the name, except it was lengthened to increase tourism from what looks like about a 5-syllable word, which means the parish of Mary in the pool of the white something or other. Oh. MD Hofsey says, I want the engine in the floors. I think it would handle better, like a Tesla. Well, yeah, the interesting thing about electric cars is instead of the engine being the big heavy part, it's, I assume, the batteries, if you were to take the batteries and consider them as a single unit. but you don't have to pack them all in one spot. You can spread them out and lower them. And if a low center of gravity is something you like, which probably is if you're talking about car handling, putting a layer of battery packs in the floor is actually a great thing to do. Daniel Kestris is a town in California named California. I did not know that. I know there's a town called Michigan City in Indiana. Kevin B, I have an opportunity to get an 85 Mazda RX-7, but the guy that has the car now doesn't have a title, and the previous owner is unknown. It's been off the road for years now. Have any ideas? Yeah, it might be stolen. That's a serious issue. There are ways in different states that you can get a car like that and get a title to it. But in Michigan, for instance, you can get that car titled, but you'd have to do a bunch of stuff, including have it run through the system to make sure it's not stolen. And then you have to post a bond. And if it's an inexpensive car, like it doesn't have a lot of value, it might be worth doing that. But it's a bunch of paperwork. But my biggest concern is that the car could be stolen, because who acquires a car without the title? Matthias says Germany has a town called Hamburg, where all the hamburgers are from. Well, we know about Hamburg. It's a big town. Oh, boy. Chris Harris, I wish you didn't have ADHD and I could be a lawyer. I've got a friend who's a lawyer. He's got ADHD. There's no question. He made it through law school and passed the bar. But, yeah, it takes a lot of studying. It depends on how good you are at reading and writing and sitting in classes for a couple of years. Southern Maryland, Steve, I live next to California, Maryland. California, Maryland. Jason Lee, the bond protects you as well as mortgage insurance does. No. The bond that you'd post in a situation like that is so that if the owner comes back and says, hey, you got my stolen car. But, the beautiful thing is that you get to go and find you go to a bonding company. You can shop around for that. But I've never done it. But, hey, I just, I wrote an article or two about it. Tiger Strips, we have a car in the driveway without a title. Maybe mom forgot where it is. But if she was the one who had it titled, she can go get a replacement title. So. MD Hofsteve, have you heard of Sandy Monroe, who does teardowns on YouTube of electric cars like Teslas and the Ford Mach-E? No, I have not. There's a lot of stuff out there, very, very cool stuff out there. I just haven't seen it. I've not heard of that. I'll take a look. Jay, contact me if you feel like suing Mr. Cooper for fraud. Well, Mr. Cooper just got in trouble for that gigantic thing about a month ago. It's just not the kind of law I practice. There are people out there who do handle it, though. So it depends on what they did. Kotak says there's a Wyoming, Minnesota. There's a Wyoming, Michigan, too. Tom, is there a statute of limitations on titles? No, titles last forever. That's the whole point. Gary pointed that out also. So if you own something, you get a paper title to it, and the state's got a record of it. I mean, you can lose the title. I wouldn't recommend it, but if you do, you can go back to state and get another title. They've got a record of it, And so one of the reasons that I complain about people who flip cars by skipping titles is that they sell the car and they hand the title over, and then the guy buys the car and decides not to put it in his name, so there's no record of it, and he goes to sell the car, and so now when someone walks in the Secretary of State's office with a title and says, look, I got a problem, this title, there's a problem with it, you got to go back to the last named person on the title, and they might not be around. I've heard of people actually die, so MD Hosty says that Wyoming, Michigan is named after the county of Wyoming, New York. We also have a Genesee County in Michigan, which I think is named after something called Genesee in New York. But yeah, a lot of those names get recycled over and over again. So, John, where Christmas, Florida is real. There's also Christmas, Michigan. Christmas in the Upper Peninsula, not far west of Munising. Rod Johnson says he's been to Paris, Idaho. Yeah, that applies. Hey, anything applies. Jump in. I believe there is a Paris, Michigan, but it's very, very small. And it might just be more of a post office location than anything else. Maine has, according to Tommy Cash, Naples, Paris, Rome, Denmark, Sweden, Mexico, Germany, Moscow, Peru, and many more. Michigan also has a Moscow, or Moscow, as they say it in Russia, a Moscow. It's down across the bottom along, I think, US 12 or the old US 12. DL, have you ever heard of a new car straw purchase? I've heard of dealerships that worry about them. I know there are some vehicles that are so hot that they'll have you sign documents saying you won't flip them for a period of time, including things like the Ford GT. But a friend of mine a couple of years ago contacted me and said that he was trying to buy, I think, like a Land Rover, a Range Rover, some expensive vehicle. And the dealership pulled out a document and said, you got to sign this saying you cannot sell the car for 12 months. And he said, why not? And they said, we're worried that people are coming in here to flip these. It's like, really? I didn't know it was that common. But I've never dealt with it. So, primarily people who call my office are calling me about legal problems. And any dealership who is worried about car flipping would be calling a dealership defense attorney, if in fact that's something they handle. I don't know. John Doe, hello all, and Steve. Serena S. There is a Darlington Avenue in Kissimmee, Florida, which we're tempted to say Kissimmee, Florida, but Kissimmee. Pruna Blue Pepper says, I drive a Twingo. Nobody will ever steal that. Urban Festus, Detroit, Maine, really? Wow. And Detroit's one you don't hear a whole lot of. But Florida's Highlanders, Centerville, Utah has an In-N-Out burger now. That's cool. They're slowly working their way west. I love their business model. I just wish they were in Michigan, but they're not. Frederick Heron points out that Hitler is no longer a popular last name. Yeah, that happens. Jordan also just watched Ford versus Ferrari. Great movie. Did you like it? Yeah, I liked it a lot. It was good. I understand that it was a Hollywood version of a story. And if you read the goofs in IMDb, there are some mistakes in the plot and stuff. But it was it's much better than you expect when Hollywood's going to make a car movie and say, yeah, it's going to be realistic. It's not going to be a cartoon type. So. Mark Bass, can you please make a video about the Low Volume Vehicle Manufacturers Act of 2015? I will take a look at it. I'm not that familiar with it. I've heard the name, but that's basically it. David E. Persons, hi, Steve. My wife and I are celebrating our 34th anniversary today and doing so listening to you. Congratulations, my friends. Just to let you know, I've been practicing law now for 30 years. 30 years. So you guys have been married 4 years longer than I've been an attorney. And I've been an attorney a long time, so that's quite an accomplishment there, my friends. Carl's Corner, New York has Florida, Rome, and Bath. And Michigan's got a Bath as well. There's a site of a disaster there where somebody blew up a school years and years and years ago. Timo Rutinen says, In-N-Out Burger does not sound healthy to me. Well, it might not if you are misunderstanding the connotations of the name. It's a drive-through place. It started out as a drive-through place. And the key was that you could go there and get food fast, but also just by going through the drive-through. And so, a lot of restaurants were sit-down restaurants. They're like, no, all we're going to do is drive. I know that they have some sit-down not restaurants now. I think in the beginning, they were pretty much exclusively drive-throughs. And the key was that you get to go in and out. So Chris Harris, why don't you use SM58s? Are those frowned upon? I've used Shure microphones and I've used the Electro Voice microphones in my broadcasting career, and I just like the way the RE20 sounds. This is an RE20. Shure microphones sound good, but I bought this one and I like it. I've had people suggest that. There's a couple others out there that I could use, but something. My whole point is that I shoot it, I dial it in, and I leave it. So there you go. It's not me then says, yeah, but that means you can now go inside it, in and out. Yeah. And when you're done, you go out. But yes, exactly. John Zablak, did you get vaccinated? Yes, I did a while ago. And I mentioned it on a video. I got zero side effects, nothing. I had a little tiny spot that if I whacked it like that, I could feel it. Didn't hurt, no side effects. So Bond James says never trust anyone over 30. I'm a little over 30 myself, my friend. Jason Johnson, don't forget the Stop and Go stores. Stop and Go. There you go. Timo Rutinen says you could have a store called In and Out, but slower. Chain. Fred Blower says Detroit actually means the Straits in French. Yes. And there's the Straits where the Detroit River goes from, down around the corner there and then heads over to Lake Erie. And at one point in time, the nickname of what is now Port Huron was also Detroit. But the name stuck with the big city that became what is now Detroit, and Port Huron became Port Huron. FDSS, does a quarter stick to your injection site? No. Neither does a $50. Oh. Ed Lowe, that over 30 slogan is 50 years old. Yeah, we were the ones who said it 30 years ago. Ian Hunter, open 24 hours, but not in a row. It's a Stephen Wright joke. Doug Jones, my daughter had a really bad bruise on her arm for 3.5 weeks at the injection site. I wonder if that's from the vaccination or from just a bad injection. Because I've had blood drawn before. I've gotten shots before where I got a bruise, but I didn't even get a bruise on this one. But I just thought it was a talented administrator who administrated the shot. Tiger Stripes, which vaccine? I got Pfizer. So. Chris Harris, do you have a favorite history book? That depends on what type of history you like. There's all kinds of history. I literally, because I have a degree in history. So, I've read more than hundreds. I've probably read thousands of history books. I read a lot of World War II stuff, a lot of American history. I've gone through phases. I've read a lot of true crime, and then I moved on from that. But if you've got a topic, but I've read a lot of first-person World War II books, for instance. But it depends. That's tough. I've got a lot of favorites in that field. Amateur Shooter, American Murder Houses. That's a book I wrote. I can't name one of my own books and say it's a favorite. Brian M., what's your opinion on Florida's new political view survey for public universities? I saw the headlines. I read some of the articles. I did not actually read the statute itself, but apparently they've signed a law saying that when you go to college as a student, you have to declare what your political views are. And a professor's got to declare what their political views are. I'm not quite sure, among other things, it seems very, very difficult to define. My political views have changed over the years. Do I have to commit now? Tom, is history subjective? Yes, everything's subjective. But I understand that some numbers aren't, but it is subjective. And so you have to not just read a book and believe it. You've got to read the book and ask how they're interpreting the sources, how believable is the author, and so on. So you don't, I've read history books I can tell you are bad. Like, this is a bad history book, but I still read it just because I wanted to understand what a different viewpoint was. So it's an interesting question. But if you get a degree in history, you'll take classes. They talk about how to figure out what really happened. What are primary sources, secondary sources, and what do they mean? So Tom H., whose version of history do you favor? Well, you got to remember, generally speaking, it's the survivors and the winners who write it. And so you got to be careful because there have been versions of history written by people who survived an event. And then later on, you discover that, well, there may have been more to the story, but the people who actually knew what happened weren't here to write it. So Leandro Garcia, do you know the lock-picking lawyer? I'm familiar with his channel, but I do not know him. John Anderson, do you miss your 2.5-ton truck? Yes, I do. Sold it a couple years ago. But Fish Guy, have you read any of the Killing books by Bill O'Reilly? No, I have not. I've read history books on some of those topics that he's written about, but I just, no, I haven't. Fortis Highlander, tertiary sources. Yeah, many people don't know that tertiary is the next word after the series primary, secondary, tertiary. First, second, third. So tertiary sources. Richard Burke, what do you think of Howard Zinn history? I've read a lot of his stuff. Obviously, he comes at it from one angle. And there's nothing wrong with reading history that is slanted as long as you understand the slant of it. And so I've read some events, histories that cover the entire gamut from the crazy people on one side to the crazy people on the other. The truth is in the middle somewhere. But it helps to understand it all. Matthias, if you have a degree in history, are you interested in a piece of the Berlin Wall, free of charge? If you've got one, I'd love to have one, as long as it'll fit in the set somewhere. I don't want to have a big old piece that's, I know shipping from Germany might be expensive. Send me an email, we'll work something out. I'd love to have a piece of the Berlin Wall. Welsh Dragon 99 says, surely political views are far more nuanced than what party best aligns with your views. Well, and almost everyone I know that I talk to about politics, which is only people I know well, will admit to me like, well, I like this, but I also like this. And very rarely does one political party align with you perfectly on everything. So Mr. Phil says, a buddy of mine offered me $1.50 with a trailer for $2,000, needs work, but I'm considering it. I saw one parked by the side of the road and I got out and looked at it. And the guy wanted $6,000 for it. He claimed it ran. It needed a little bit of work, but you can get them for around $6,000 to $8,000, depending on the condition they're in. But $2,000, if it runs, is a great deal. But if it needs work to get it running, you need to find out, because it's a diesel engine and the parts are available, but you got to find somebody with the expertise who can work on it. That's the tricky part. So just checking in, says up, Steve, from Idaho. I'm assuming you have an Idaho joke. Not really. Idaho is just a name. It's like Kalamazoo. It's just a name. It's fun to say. Daniel Kester, where is your plate representing the USS Cole? Right there. Behind me on my left. Timo Rutnen, if I interview an eyewitness and write a book, is that book a secondary or a tertiary source? Well, these are difficult things to get into measuring, but the eyewitness is a primary source, okay? And so an accurate recording of the primary source, some people go, well, that's a secondary source, because now this describes that. But, so for instance, when I'm doing research on something that went through a court system, okay? and I have a transcript of what happened in court, and I quote what that person said, I'm reasonably certain that's an accurate quote of what was said in court, because there's a court reporter who's sworn to accurately record the testimony, and I've got an accurate copy of the transcript. You know, the trickier part is a lot of people tend to believe news reports, and so they'll find an old newspaper and they'll say, "Hey, look, the Detroit News on the morning of November 12th, 1937 wrote this." They did write that. Doesn't make it true, but they wrote it. And so you got to be careful how you phrase things that are based on those kinds of sources. Because if you said, this happened that day, and you point to the newspaper report, that's not correct. You'd have to say, the newspapers reported this day, and say what they reported, because that's correct. They did report it, as long as your newspaper is accurate. So, SOB, first live show, checking in from Charlton, Massachusetts. Thanks for checking in, my friend. Chico Vasquez says, can you put a magnet on the spot where you got the injection? Will it stay there by itself? No. Somebody asked that earlier, although I guess they asked earlier if a coin would stick to it, but Michael Goodwin says, I used to work for Reebok. In college, I wrote 2 projects on shoes and call centers where I had to cite myself. That is one of my goals in life. I've written a bunch of books, and a couple of my books have become primary fodder for Wikipedia. So go check all the footnotes for the Turban Car entry on Wikipedia. And it's Lehto, 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 Lehto. And the same is true for the Italian hull disaster. And the question is, if I were ever to write something tangentially about those things, not citing Wikipedia, but citing myself, I could do it. Leandro Garcia, any plans to talk about the Giuliani suspension? Not really, only because that's gotten too political. And I don't think I can talk about that without people getting upset either way. So unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be doing a video on that. Pruna Blue Pepper, what's the story behind the U.S. Coast Guard sign behind you? It was sent to me by somebody who's in the U.S. Coast Guard and said, hey, Steve, wanted to just represent on the set. And I said, send it on over. So Driving New England's checking in from Manchester, New Hampshire. Bond, James, did Midland get a tornado yesterday? Midland, Michigan? I don't know. I know there was reports of funnel clouds in Swartz Creek, Michigan, which is a suburb of Flint, and also some heavy damage up in Port Austin, tip of the thumb, that may or may not have been tornado related. But I did not see anything on the news about this morning. I forgot to check. Chico Vasquez, have you got an x-ray of the spot where you got the injection? No. I don't have an x-ray machine just laying around. So no, I haven't been x-rayed since. Jim Whitehead, is the low-flying owls a real sign from an area or a joke? Well, all of the above. It's not a real sign in that it wasn't made by a manufacturer of roadside signs. The speed limit sign is an actual sign that was on a road somewhere, and I think it got retired and got in the stream of commerce. Somebody bought it and so on. But there are signs around the country that say, beware low-flying owls. And so the gentleman who sent me that sign saw it for sale and ordered it, but it's a reproduction of an actual sign. So in that sense, it's pretty cool. Oh, the Miami building tragedy, Mike Coos. Could the state have condemned that building? Suits are not far away. That one's a mess, and it's still unfolding, and I've been reading a lot about it. I've got friends in Florida. I spoke to somebody down there who knew somebody who was in the building, and this condominium high-rise collapsed, just collapsed. And now it's coming out that there was issues that had been reported with structural damage, and they were supposed to start fixing some stuff up, but they hadn't gotten around to it yet. And there's going to be a very large number of casualties when it's all over. But right now, there's over 150 people missing, and it's difficult to even think about because number one, they've got to clean up the spot, figure out who was there and who was not there. And then, for instance, there's another building right next to it that appears to have been almost like attached or something. And the question is that building structurally sound? So, Tigerman99515, did you put fresh gas to your outboard yet? No, I haven't, but I drained it properly last time. So every time I've drained it and refilled it, it started right up. Demurex says, in court, lawyers are advocates and the jury finds the truth. In history, historians are the advocates who determine the truth. Yes and no. Or you could say historians are the advocates for the history and just there'll be a general understanding. But there are some things that not everyone agrees on. And so, I've written books on things that were contentious. And I don't think I convinced everyone who reads my books, but I think I've moved the needle of public opinion or public knowledge a little bit. But yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Lee Maynard, would you like a UK license plate to add to your collection? I'd love one. Send me a note. We'll work something out. I'd love one. Just not one on the set yet. I've got the. Nope, I guess it's not. Here we go. I've got the replica of a Finnish license plate. But Stephen Shaw needs to hit the road. Steve, thanks. Hey, thanks, my friend. We've been here for an hour. Matthew Shostrom, I'm seeing TikTok videos now concerning the FBI seizing the security boxes, so word is getting out. That's interesting. The story starts in the news, gets to YouTube, works its way onto Facebook and Twitter, and next thing you know, they're doing TikTok videos about it. So yeah, that shows you that the word is getting out. Pretty cool. Jason Thompson just joined. Love your content. Even got my 74-year-old mom hooked on you. Thanks. Brianna CC, Steve pays top dollar for antiques. What I usually do is I'll talk to somebody who's got something, say, what do you think it's worth? And then I'll offer to do a trade for books or something, because some people I've actually said, hey, Steve, can I buy a book from you? I said, well, how about this? I'll trade you a book for what you got, that kind of thing. Dan Smith checking in from, is it Kelowna? British Columbia? I'm probably mispronouncing that. Jonathan Bailey, Viva Fry also covered the safe deposit box story. Yeah, a lot of people have. And I've actually done, I think, 3 or 4 videos on it now. I'm not even sure. Pruna Blue Pepper, can I trade you my book for yours? What book is yours? Ram 50 V8's checking in from Toasty and Humid, Harrison, Arkansas. Co-taxista is bartered income taxable income. In theory, I believe it is. I'm not a tax guy, though. Lee Harvey, did you include Sam Shepard in your Murder Houses book? I don't think so. I mean, I know I did, and I think it's because I don't think the building's there anymore. I don't think the house is there anymore. There were a whole bunch of famous houses that had murders in them that no longer stand. So, for instance, the John Wayne Gacy house is no longer there. The Heaven's Gate house is no longer there. 2 of the 3 Manson houses are there, but the one in the middle is not. So, but I actually went out, but one of the criteria was the house has to still be standing. Because the house got knocked down, it can become a very short book, and plus you can't go and gawk at it like the way you go gawk at the other ones. So Harry says bartered is taxable income. I thought it was. They'll tax everything they can. Guy Lee would love to get a hardcover of Drawn to Injustice. Problem is it didn't come out in hardcover. It's coming back out again in paperback this fall, but it was never available in hardcover. Sammy Boy, can we get some callers? Set up a Google device. One of these days, I'm going to be doing a call-in talk show, but that's another story for another day. We'll talk about that. James Schmelik says it's Kelowna, BC, home of the Ogopogo. Is that one of the mythical creatures? Ian Hunter says 2 different murders in Caro, Michigan at the same house. Really? I was not aware about that. Bill McMahon is the Timothy McMaster's book coming back into print. Yeah, Timothy Master's book is coming back into print this fall. Leandro Garcia, any UFO or ghost experiences to share? No, I've never seen a UFO, and I've never seen what I consider to be a ghost or anything like that I couldn't explain. So, Gary Weisenberg says Detroit has had murders. Have they? For years, it was reputedly the murder capital of America. So, Tigerman 99515. Can Americans drive into Canada now? I believe they're going to be able to shortly, but I'm not sure if they have yet. I'm not sure how the rules are. I was exchanging messages with JP about this. But I think they're going to be allowed to shortly. I'm not sure. Yeah, Scott Campbell says they raised the entire apartment building that Jeffrey Dahmer lived in. Yes, that's another one that I would have done a story on. American Murder Houses contains at least one apartment complex, one apartment and one townhouse that's attached. And I would have included that, but I didn't because the building's no longer there. Patrick Garneau says Canada has kept the border closed for non-essential travel. Yeah, the question is, when are they going to lift it, though? I think they are talking about lifting it soon to people who've got documentation that they've been vaccinated. I think, but Irving Briscoe says, I think the announcement was for July for the U.S. to travel to Canada. Mark Miller says Jeffrey Dahmer's childhood home is still standing. American Childhood Murderer Homes, Volume 1 by Steve Lehto. Rod Johnson, how many more VinWiki videos can we expect? At least one more, but I keep thinking there are more. I've forgotten. I literally have forgotten. I went down to his place in Atlanta and shot 11 videos. 11. And I don't think we've run 10 yet. So there's at least one more coming, but we'll see how that goes. All caps, the Jammer. Love you, brother. Best lawyer ever. Well, thank you. Oh, 90 knots. Are you currently teaching any classes? No, I'm not. I'm not teaching right now. I was actually asked right before COVID hit if I was willing to teach a business law class at a local college. And I said, yes, I'd like to. That'd be fun. I'd like to 2 days a week come in and talk about business law with undergraduates. And then COVID hit and it fell through. And so it turns out if I'd had to do that with COVID, it would have been a nightmare. But I've told people at some places that are nearby, if the right situation arose, I'd be happy to teach. But it just hasn't happened yet. So. Doug Jones got to run. Thanks for being there, my friend. Lee Maynard, will you ever do a video with Scotty Kilmer? I don't know him. I don't even know if he uses guests or not. And I don't do a lot where I'm guests with people or co-hosting, only because my technology is not set up that way yet. So, Michael Goodwin is in the process of applying to teach at the college he graduated from, teaching Excel and Word. Cool. Scott Campbell's checking out. Have a great rest of you all, y'alls. D. Perry, what do you have against RVs? Thanks for asking. I've got nothing against them. But I think that people need to be careful when they buy them. Learn what you're getting, know what you're getting before you get into it, and do that. Matthew Shostrom, which type of professor did you prefer, full-time or adjunct? I had mostly full-time professors in undergrad and in law school, but I had a few adjuncts. And the interesting thing about the adjuncts I always had were teaching very, very specialized courses who were experts in their specialized course. So, for instance, I taught lemon law and consumer protection at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law. I taught Michigan history to an undergraduate class at U of D. And so those are things that I know very, very well. I specialize in them. But if you said, hey, Steve, the history department wants to come in and teach like European history. Well, I took the class, I read some books, but I'm not the guy to teach that class. And so when an adjunct was brought in who specifically specializes in that class, in a specialized class, those can be very, very good. Those can be very, very good. So, when you leave law school and you start practicing law and you meet an attorney who's a specialist in something, you can learn a lot from them. So that's pretty cool about law school. Tabby's daddy's stepping away. Oh, I had to step away. I'm finishing drywall. Wow. Jacob Lynch, you reach considerably more people on this platform versus a classroom. I personally want to thank you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I've told people that one of my goals of doing radio in the first place as a talk show host was I wanted to teach people about consumer protection. But also partly is because I would spend a lot of time talking to people who learned from me for the first time what they had just done was wrong. And if I'd only gotten to them sooner. And so I now have people saying, Steve, I saw your video about such and such, and it helped me with this. Getting out of tickets, buying a used car, whatever it might be. And so it means I've actually gotten the word out to people who can use it instead of finding out later what they did wrong. Co-taxista, and I envy people who can do drywall. Eddie Boyd, have you ever sold cars? I've been in the business for 20 years, and you seem like a former salesman based on all the knowledge of the business you know. Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I have not. I've jokingly told people that if I wanted to make a ton of money and then burn in a hot place after I died, I'd go sell used cars today. I could sell used cars all day long because I know all the tricks. I'd have a hard time doing it because it's difficult, but I know all the tricks. I know them all. At least I know a lot of them. And so I've never have, but I can tell you a couple of years ago, I was at a deposition and I was questioning a guy who was the manager of a car dealership. And at the end of the deposition, you're getting ready to leave, his attorney turns to me and said, I've never met an attorney who knows as much about cars as you do. I said, thank you. So I'll take it. Sub GR77 points out that anyone can do drywall, but most don't do it well. Good citizen, are you into ham radio? I see the mics and the Silver Eagle microphone. No, I know people who are. And in fact, I've got a couple of ham radio shirts I wear from time to time on camera. But people send me stuff, but I have the microphones because I have a background in radio. And I've always liked microphones. I know these are not broadcast microphones. Many of them are not. This one obviously is. But that's just because I like that and I worked in radio for so long. Danny Bates, anyone know any good woodworking YouTube channels? There's a bunch. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I've got a couple friends and relatives who do woodworking. And there's a whole bunch of channels out there. They'll show you how to make anything you want. Ian Hunter found it funny that I said I would have a hard time selling cars. There is a hierarchy. Do you have a University of California Santa Cruz Banana Slugs t-shirt? That one doesn't ring a bell. I don't think so. I literally just heard about 30 seconds ago a wave of rain go over, hit the roof, like 1,000 animals up there, and then just disappear. And so I'll bet you anything, if I go outside right now, it's going to be sunny out and be one dark storm cloud off in the distance. Ilya Lawa says, can you make a time machine out of wood? I don't think so. I think time machines require exotic metals, tungsten, molybdenum, things like that. Things at the bottom right-hand corner of the periodic chart, I would think. Just someone, what is your favorite shirt? It's your favorite shirt. I really, really like the ones that said, meth were on it. I stopped wearing because I had so many and I wore them so often. I like the I do not consent shirt. I wear that one quite a bit too. I think that's funny. Sean Kane, my wife's a judge and she likes your show, as do I. What state is she a judge in? That's very cool. I've mentioned before, I wouldn't want to be a judge. I respect judges and admire them for doing it. It's just a whole different level of nonsense you have to put up with. Sam Sense is a good woodworking channel called Fixing Furniture. MD Hosty, Iridium. There's a good thing that you'd have to put in a time machine. And of course, Captain Irk says unobtainium. Captain Irk. I knew a guy whose last name was Kirk. He got a license plate that said Kirk out. Fish Guy says Ham Radio is doing a contest where you go off the grid for 24 hours and forget the date. Yeah, they do a bunch of contests. They also do the contest where they see how many people you can contact in different states within a certain time period. There's a couple people on here who do that. I recognize the names. Mike Coos, podcasts you've been on. I've been on a few, although nowadays you draw the distinction between a YouTube channel and a podcast. A lot of them are the same. But I've been on, with Leonard French. I've been on Sam Crack a couple times, the guy who rebuilds the cars. And I was on a woman's channel about RVs and I forgot her name. Oh, it's horrible. I'm bad with names. P.A. Ryson says time machines are made from stolen catalytic converters. Yeah, but you got to steal like 10,000 of them. That's the problem. Daniel Kester, dilithium. I was at dilithium, sounded more like it belongs in coffee. Oh, Text to Sturgis says this is actually Ham Radio Field Day weekend. Okay, I've heard some talk about that. Amateur shooter confirms it's the ARRL Field Day weekend. Flux capacitor, of course, Lee Maynard says. Although getting a DeLorean might be cheaper. Yeah, you get a DeLorean and strip it out of there. Canadian Robot Lady says, yeah, that was Robin from Creativity RV. Thank you. Canadian Robot Lady backing me up. Thank you very much. And Louis Rossman, I did a video with him. Ilya reminds us. Vernon Turner says you can't contain a warp field using wood. Now, wood is an odd thing in what it insulates from and doesn't insulate from. So Tom H. now says the amateur radio event is called Field Day, but it just ended. So that could be also. Keith Green says, I discovered Steve through searching for Sam Crack videos. Just as entertaining. Thank you. Sam Crack, I have to give that guy credit. And I mean, it's not like he set out to do this. But what happened was Sam bought a wrecked pizza car at auction, a Domino's pizza delivery car. It had Domino's livery all over it. And he rebuilt it and was going to actually take it out and do stuff with it. And Domino's contacted him and said, very heavy-handedly, you can't do that. We own the rights to the livery on that car. And there's some debate about who said what when, because I know some people are saying that they demanded the car back, but they didn't own the car. They simply had the rights to use the livery, and they said he did not have the rights. They're talking about trademark, intellectual property. And so I did a video about that, which he thought was funny. And so he called me up and said, do you want to be on my show? We did a joint show together. And it was that time, right around then, when I picked up my first huge spike in subscribers. And then I talked to him a couple other times about lemon law. He bought a recycled lemon, for instance. But sadly, the videos about the pizza car also drew some of the most hatred and just vitriolic comments. People were basically calling me a Nazi because I was explaining that Domino's does own their logo. And it's funny that someone says that today because I'm wearing the shirt that I wore in one of those videos. And somebody said, Steve, you're wearing Richard Petty's logo. That means he can steal your shirt. And number one, Richard Petty sells these shirts with the logo on it to the public. Domino's does not sell its pizza cars to the public. That's the distinction. And people don't even bother to listen to a distinction. They just go, oh, we don't like big business. We like Sam. I like Sam. You know, I'm not a big fan of Domino's. And then some guy accused me of being in the pocket of Big Pizza, which started another running joke. So, Mark Heil, what's more attractive to a woman? Someone metal detecting or a ham radio operator? You may as well throw in or some guy waiting around in overalls or the fly fishing waiters, fishing. For whatever reason, the field of metal detecting I can speak to. There are very few women who metal detect. And when I'm out metal detecting and women see me, more often than not, I get that look kind of like, look at that gross old man covered in dirt. So I don't think anybody's out there picking up the ladies while metal detecting. Ham radio, possibly, I guess. I don't know. I think there's a big overlap there, though. Ascania says UFOs are big pizza. Sub GR77 says Lehto is the Noid. 90 knots, speaking from experience, says equal attraction. Equal attraction, yes. But is equal attraction down here or up here on the scale? That's the question. Travis Kell says awesome live show. Thank you. Text to Sturgis says most of us ham radio guys, we've taken the red pill and don't care if women like it or not. Well, you're allowed to have hobbies too that aren't designed to try to be picking up the opposite sex, right? So Matthew Shostrom says, would you rather mow 2 acres of grass or deal with 4 cubic feet worth of thorn vines wrapped around trees? I chose the latter and regret my decisions. Yeah, I'd rather mow. Recently, I've been doing some intensive yard work with vines and poison oak and poison ivy. And I mentioned the bruise that I got right there, but I also have some remnants of poison oak and poison ivy here. And so that's not fun. That's not mowing grass can be monotonous and time consuming, but it's not painful if you're doing it right. So the Fuse Man's sister has a metal detector, never seen her use it. There you go. And Chad Amsler says, it's summer. We need more Viper videos with you cruising. Yes, I'll get out soon and do that. Hey, I'm going to wrap it up. It's almost an hour and a half into the show. I appreciate it, guys. Keep watching during the week. I'll be back on Sunday. Same time, same place. Until then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.